Hello and welcome. This is my interview series, and we have Nymia. So, would you like to introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, and what you enjoy doing in the game?
My new character name is Nymia. My previous character everyone knows me by is Tick Tick. I am currently at the Emerald Glades. I live up in the Cleveland area.
Yeah, all right. And how long have you been in the game?
Way too long. My Amtgard career can drink. Um, I've been in the game since around sometime in the fall of 2003.
Oh, cool. So you've been here a while. You've seen a bunch of the different transitions in the game and stuff, and how things have kind of evolved over the years.
Yeah,
Not
very
really the
much
Wild
actually.
West. Awesome. So let's jump right in. So you are non-combat, and from my understanding, you used to be able to fight, but you've taken a hiatus from fighting for a bit. Would you like to talk about that, or?
So back last year in December, I got into a car accident and it really messed up my rotator cuff. But I also found out during that whole thing that I was sick. So because of that and the way it affects my lungs, I am not medically clear to actually fight until my treatment's over. So I have to wait until sometime in the end of February, March, where my last scans are, before I know if I can actually fight again.
Oh, well, I hope that everything goes well with that. That definitely sounds like a big adjustment to have to make. If it's all right with you, I'd actually like to talk about how you fought previously and how that impacts your experience as a non-combatant. Is that something you'd be interested in talking about, or?
Sure, I fought just to be able to enjoy the game. The first experience was always just fighting. There wasn't really any of the other aspects of Amtgard for like the first two-ish years before I expanded into other groups. So it was all about like becoming better as a healer and a bard, which were my first two classes. And that's all it was for the first 2 years.
Ah, okay. So I'm assuming that wanting to get good at healer and bard originally drew you to combat in Amtgard, or was it something else that really interested you?
I don't know if it's necessarily that I was originally drawn into Amtgard fighting by becoming better. It's just that that was the only thing that was available at the time when we started the group. And I kind of stuck with that until I learned about the role playing aspect of Amtgard, and I kind of gravitated more to that, but still stayed fighting because it was a big part of the game, and not many groups really just kind of RP'd. So you got to RP where you could, and then we got into when I first got into the Crystal Groves, I started doing some of the arts and sciences stuff, not really much except out of sight of like qualifications. And then when I got into the Rising Winds, I started kind of looking into the other aspects of Rising Winds, which is service and stuff like that. So as I grew as a player, more aspects of the game started coming out that I kind of gravitate more towards than I do fighting.
That's really cool. Right on. So it essentially opened up more doors to you, you would say?
Yeah, I'd say the non-com side of things have opened up so much in the way of doors.
Mhm.
Uh, I am so grateful for Creatober last year because it had allowed me to kind of figure out what type of arts that I could get into, and I found mosaic art, which is very fascinating to me, and just started weaving belts here lately. So
Yeah, I saw that on Facebook and I saw that and I thought it was pretty cool. I've tried it before, but like it's beyond my comprehension.
I totally get it. There are some very complicated weaves.
How did your perspective on Amtgard the game change once you started to take up more non-combat roles aside from fighting?
I think it gave me a much bigger appreciation for the game as a whole. When you're kind of stuck into that, like if you're just part of a park and not taking part in like higher levels of Amtgard, you are bound by sort of the culture of that park. If they're not ANS people, you don't deal with ANS stuff. If they're not role play people, you don't deal with role play.
Hmm.
But it wasn't until I got into the Rising Winds, probably about 2015, when I started going to events and I started seeing the more broad perspective of things. And I think that I appreciate the game so much more that I have all the aspects of Amtgard than just the single aspect of fighting.
That's really cool. So, hmm, in what ways did your background with fighting in the game help with your non-com contributions, or do you really think that they kind of influence each other at all?
I think it does because having an understanding of the ideas of fighting and stuff kind of gives you a perspective in terms of like if you volunteer to crat as an example, you kind of get an idea of how your particular area is going to be affected by the fighting side as opposed to just kind of stumbling across it. As an autocrat, knowing the fighting side is super helpful too, because you can kind of see what the event's supposed to be and sort of pick the correct, I don't want to say correct, the person that is best suited for the warcrat position because you're aware of what that entails in the fighting side of things. So service and even ANS, you sort of get an idea of, for me when I do belts, what belts actually work better, what weaves would look better fighting as opposed to just
Oh.
a decorative thing. If I wanted to do some kind of 3D art, like I'm working on a belt right now that has little onions dropping down from the tail, that is more, you want to use a different material because it's going to be in battle as opposed to a decorative piece. So, you kind of get a good idea of what is feasible fighting in the ANS if you do stuff like Garvin stuff. I think that is very important too.
That's really interesting because that's something that I never really thought about because I'm not much of a fighter myself. So that's actually like super good advice that I'll be keeping in mind if I ever make like a belt favor for someone or something. Like, that's really cool. So, do you feel like it's important for all Amtgarders to experience both combat and non-combat aspects of the game, and why?
I don't necessarily think that it is super important. I think understanding both aspects of the game is super important, but not necessarily that you have to experience because there are people who can't fight. Like there's no way for them to fight because of any kind of disabilities or like me where I have to deal with lung sickness and I can't do that constant running around and stuff. But understanding the rules and what fighting is and how the hits are taken and stuff like that certainly helps for things like running for office, for things like, ANS stuff. So having the idea of what fighting entails, it's not necessarily required for you to up and fight. So I think that is the most important part.
So, what advice would you give to fighters who are like slowing down with fighting, cannot fight momentarily, or who are considering a different role in the game?
Talk to people. I think that is the most important thing is you have to when you're only fighting and you look at the more non-combat aspects of the game, you really have to kind of open your mind to all the aspects of the game. As an example, if you're looking to go into ANS, do something like Creatober. During Creatober last year, I told myself I was going to do something different for every single day. And I did. So I opened my mind to all these different types of art to see what actually stuck. So that was super important for me. And then I realized, holy crap, I could actually do this. The same thing with service. Like, kind of talk to people, find out the types of things that you might be interested in, and then maybe find somebody to sort of mentorship you. Like that is also a really important thing.
So, I actually want to talk about your role more now with general non-combat. So, I know you've mentioned you do a lot of ANS, weaving and things. I also know that you crat Bridge Wars, but super excited for. I also know that you do like constant service, cratting, leadership. So I'd really like to talk to you about that. So, what non-combat activities would you say you enjoy the most with Amtgard?
I don't know how like so role play, of course. Role play is like my bread and butter. I really enjoy role play and to the more extent of playing different NPCs for night quests. Love to kind of broaden that sort of as perspective. And then I go into the ANS thing. I'm starting to really enjoy the idea of the belts and sashes and seeing them on people. Like that is like I like the idea of being recognized by awards, but honestly, my joy comes from seeing people want to wear my stuff. So,
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like, as an award maker as well, one of my biggest joys in this game is being able to make stuff for people. So I can get that. Yeah. Like, even though I don't weave. Moving on to more specific stuff, let's talk about service and cratting.
okay.
Because you're one of the people I think about when it comes to service and cratting, because I always see you in service positions at events.
Yeah, so my experience has always been like I go to events specifically if I don't find something that's very interesting to me, I will go and just service the entire event. I have had four events in a row where I was either just all gate or throwing in operations, which is, trash and event services. And I just spend my entire time service. Mostly because I get the idea, or I like the idea of the fact that other people can do stuff that they want to do rather than volunteering 24/7, especially the crats, having somebody that will take that opportunity and go, hey, go eat, go enjoy a fight or something like that is super important because the crats put so much into it. I just started doing crat stuff this last November-ish and March. I did junior cratting and in December I ended up the autocrat for the Dead of Winter for Midgard
Hmm.
and did that. That was pretty fun. And then I, on a whim, bidded for Bridge Wars because nobody else was bidding, and I was like, I'm gonna do this, and I got Bridge Wars bid, and I'm like, this is kind of cool. This is kind of nervous. This is kind of cool.
Yes.
So I'm so excited for this. Like, I really am.
So I actually want to ask you a little bit about Bridge Wars here, kind of diverting off the path a little bit, because I want to know how you picked your theme, number one. It is such a cool theme. It hasn't been done yet in the Rising Winds, at least I know of. So yeah, I thought it was really cool. But also, like, autocratting, is this your first time autocratting a kingdom event? Or
Yes. So
ooh.
the other event that I autocrated was just a Midgard winter mid raid.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
so this is my first time autoing a kingdom event. So I've never actually even cratted an event. I've only junior cratted. So I didn't get really involved into that aspects. But I originally wanted to go with Legends of the Hidden Temple, but somebody had just done that. And I was like, okay, I won't do that. But like I really like the idea of doing nostalgic sort of things for events. And then, Bridge Wars is always a combat event. That is 100% what it's like. And I'm like, let's do guts. I think doing like this Olympic style combat type of thing is like super awesome. And then I just started running with it. I'm even having an artisan, I'm hoping that they'd be able to finish it, but they're making a piece of the aggro crag for the winners of Bridge Wars.
That is
So I'm
so
super excited for that. And then I've got my non-com. They're doing a bunch of different games and stuff that's sort of like the more Olympic style type of things to earn points for your team. It's super, super fun. I'm really enjoying it.
yeah, I'm really excited for Bridge Wars as well because it's like honestly probably my favorite event of the year just because, nice weather, lots of people to see and hang out with. So as a crat, what's the most challenging or fun part of coordinating different things for an event?
Communication. Like communicating with all the moving parts is the hardest thing because you, especially with when you deal with a lot of different people. I think I have like 9 crats on my team at this moment. I
Wow.
could be wrong, but like some crats do Facebook, some crats do Discord, some crats reject technology altogether, and you have to go through a third party, and then trying to coordinate with like kingdom monarchy and and this site and not getting the answers you need right away. Like it's really hard sometimes.
Oh yeah, like I couldn't imagine on like a kingdom scale. That would probably, I'd imagine it's pretty rough at some points.
Yeah, like I got it 2 monarchies ago. So like your monarch by the time I do the event, I have a whole different monarchy. So the monarchy that I talked to when I got the event was a whole different aspect. So it was just kind of, you're just trying to balance everything out.
Do you have a favorite event site? You've been here since 2015, so I'm assuming you went to Camp Hannons at some point.
So I did Hannon's. I even did there was Castlebrook. There was another site before Castlebrook that the kingdom outgrew, and I can't remember what it was called. Strangely enough, the Midgard did a their Dead of Winter at I think it's Kindred Cove. It is a much smaller site, but it is still, I don't know if a kingdom event can be placed there, but I think it's an amazing site. They have a really good owners, really large sort of barn that is heated and cooled. They have several places where you could camp and you can fight. Like it is such a beautiful place. My second would be Billy Creek. Obviously, Billy Creek is amazing. Their owners and everything's just fantastic.
Wow, that sounds like a lovely place. I might have to pop over to Midgard at some point because that sounds awesome.
Winter End Rain is going to be at Kindred Cove.
Oh,
Or not,
really?
Winter Mid Rain, not End Rain. Winter Mid Rain is going to be at Kindred Cove again. So I'm super excited for it.
Well, that's awesome. As a crat and as someone who attends events in general, what would you like to see more of at events?
Full immersion and full immersion role play and event long activities. As an example, Battlecry this year, there was the combat cards where you would try to fight as many as you could at the time or during the entire event, and then you had the constant ongoing quests that you had to do, to get stuff. And like you go back to Sholomance, you had wanted to earn as many points as you could possibly do for your team and stuff. So the full immersion and like the event long stuff is so much better of activities, especially because some people can't do this part of the day, and these events are only available this part of the day. And when they want to do this event, they can't. So having a weekend long event, like even something like I think my very first event at Crystal Groves, they had an assassin game that played all week, or all weekend, and it was you got a mark and then when you killed your mark, you got another mark, and it was based on at the end who survived all of those assassinations. So like that is a very fun type of game to do at events.
Yeah, that's really cool. I've heard of assassin games before at events, but I never actually quite experienced it myself. So hearing people talk about it, it's really, really interesting. It sounds like a lot of fun and chaos.
Oh, it definitely is chaotic.
I would expect no less at an Amtgard event, right? When you're providing services for events, do you prefer to be in a background role or in a role that interacts with people like NPCing, RP? Example would be like a guild master, Guild Wars if you were there, stuff like that.
Oh, I'm a very front-facing person. I am very I talk about this a lot, but I'm customer service based. So I am a very front-facing person. I love to role play. I love NPC and night quests. It's probably my favorite thing to do. Even for this Bridge Wars, I have a character that I'm going to be playing the entire time during Bridge Wars. So I'm going to have so much fun with that. Granted, I'll be running around like crazy, but anybody who interacts with me will interact with the characters.
Oh, that's super exciting. Wow. So it sounds like you have pretty big plans for Bridge Wars too, then.
Yeah. Can't do anything small.
So my last question related to service cratting and events. What are ways that crats can be more mindful of non-combatant participants, do you think?
I believe crats do generally what they can to be mindful for non-coms. We obviously most events, if not all events, have a non-com crat specifically for that. And they're usually the people who are part of the non-com community. I do wish that there could be like more immersive role playing, but I'm obsessed with role playing. But like I think that the culture is changing to allow for more things for non-coms to do. So I think that that is super important at this point.
I do agree that, the crats are always pretty awesome with non-com inclusion and stuff. And that's something that I've seen a lot more since COVID. I'm not sure if you've noticed that as well, but it seems like
No, I've pretty noticed it. That COVID changed everything for Amtgard so much. For example, pre-COVID, one of my favorite things to do with TickTick was hand out quote unquote ginger crackers, but they really were just animal crackers. But I would not do that post-COVID for obvious reasons. It's not necessarily safe for that aspect of her character. So, it changed a lot.
oh yeah, that's fair. Thank you very much for answering those questions. I'm actually going to go on to ANS now
Okay.
because I'm, we've talked a lot about your service and how you craft and stuff, but I'm really interested to hear about like all the different arts and crafts you do. You mentioned belt weaving. Is there anything else that you're currently really interested in?
So I'm really interested in mosaic art. That's something that I learned from Creatober was mosaic art. I still trying to understand the color wheel, but you know, I started getting into digital art too. That's been pretty fun. I'm working currently on a geometric mosaic for a master owl sort of belt flag. So I think that that's going to turn out really well. It's so tedious, but it's going to turn out really well.
Is there an art you consider yourself specialized in, with the crafts you do? Or is it kind of just you tend to dabble in?
um, does role play count?
Yes. Actually, I
So
would definitely count that as an art, especially like performance arts for
mhm.
Night Quest. I would count that for dragons personally,
uh,
but
that would probably be close to like my specialized. But honestly, if it's not role play, I would say that I specialize in like writing and weaving. Like I just started weaving belts and I'm still not mastered it, but I do enjoy it more than just about any other craft, honestly.
you mentioned that the mosaic art at an ANS class, right?
No, so it was during Creatober,
Oh.
when every single day I wanted to do something different. And I learned about paper mosaics and started I did a piece that was talking about the mind or some kind of like mental health issue was the term, and I did a paper mosaic with sticky notes and did it. And I just really enjoyed it. Like the interpretation of the idea and everything that just kind of drew me to the mosaic art.
That's really cool. Paper mosaics are like really intricate too. Is there a specific class in Amtgard you love to teach or take that hasn't been taught yet, or that you haven't seen?
Actually, what I'd like to do, so I have done group RP classes for character development and stuff, but
Hmm.
I'd love to sit down and do a bunch of one-on-one classes with people to sort of bring their ideas to life. Character development itself is such an important part of role play, and not a lot of people do it. It's kind of always been for a lot of people where they just jump in, this is their character, and then it's a chaotic ball of mess until you actually establish your character. But if you do character development prior, it seems more like a person than it does this ball of spaghetti.
Let's talk about RP and your persona, because I'm really interested. So, is Nymia more of a pen name for you, or is there a difference between you and your Amtgard character?
So Nymia is a new character. Prior to, I haven't even got her garb yet because I'm waiting for the mask. So like Canard and Tick Tick, it's always been somebody else because I like acting the role. It was pretty funny with Tick Tick being totally different than who I was because I'm this nervous, awkward social person while Tick Tick is not. Tick Tick loves talking to people and stuff like that. And I remember somebody recently telling me that for a while there, I didn't know where Tick Tick ended and Amber began. But now I see that and I'm like, that's great. So like that was a good feeling.
So, how'd you come up with Nemia's name? And you can answer this for Tick Tick and Canard as well.
Okay, so I couldn't tell you how I came up with Nimi's name. I do not know. I've tried to rack my brain with that. Tic Tac was created due to a battle game that I was in. I was playing a monster, and it was a lizard folk, and part of the battle game was throwing throwable coins at people. And every time I threw throwable coins, I would go tick 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 tick. Just when I threw the coins. So when I sat down, I was like, I can do this. And I just created Tick Tick and the entire history of her people. Canard, the name Canard came from, so I was looking for when I became Grand Duke or was looking to become Grand Duke, I was looking for alternative titles for the Grand Duke title because I don't really care for like the established norms. And I was on the SCA website and found out that in Middle English, the title of Duke could be used for duck. So when I saw that, I was like, I'm going with it. I just created the character Canard. If I was smarter, I would have put Goose as the last name, but like into a different language. So it was the Grand Duck Duck Goose, but it was basically the Grand Duck Duck Duck. But that's how his name came into play,
That's beautiful. Oh my gosh.
right?
My gosh, that's so cool. And I love how creative you are with your different roles and making sure that they're each individual characters as well.
Mhm.
Because the thing I've noticed with RP at least is that a lot of people tend to stick with the same role, like they find that a role fits them and they really stick with it. But I really like it when people, branch out into different things. Do you roleplay differently at different events?
So I haven't really gotten into the role play with Nemia yet, which is going to be a little bit different because Nemia is going to start out as very non-verbal, where it's just going to be noises. So as the events go by, Nemia is supposed to start picking up English words without actually knowing what they mean, and then the establishing of continuing on as she starts to mock people and copy them, and then I'm hoping for people to come and try to get her to say things to other people just without her knowing what it is, and then eventually just kind of slowly have her being taught English to where she becomes fully speaking. But with Tick Tick, there was the gender cracker things that I couldn't really do, so I had to establish something else and sort of create, and like in between events I would write the role play or the things like my character's story to see how they developed in between events and then would role play based on that development. So that's sort of how I definitely role play differently between events.
So, weird question. Is anemia a Kenku? Or
Uh,
what?
so so Nemia is a forest spirit. So
Oh,
Nemia
okay.
was I didn't want to call her a Trent because I don't necessarily think that that's what I'm going for. But Nemia is sort of a forest spirit. She was made of a tree. A fallen hero fell and died at the tree, and then slowly over time, the tree absorbed its spirit, and from there, Nemia was born. So Nemia became this sentient spirit that was made out of this fallen warrior. I don't know exactly how the aspects of that fallen warrior soul is going to kind of come into roleplay yet, but I think it's going to be super fun.
So, do you prefer a static RP role where you know exactly what to say and do, or do you prefer a role where you can improv and add in different things on the fly?
So I lean towards the more improv stuff based on the established lore of the character. Granted, I have no problem with like the static roles for like role play and NPCs for night quests and stuff. I can go with that, but I do prefer this more like improv-y things, making my character a person as opposed to just something on paper. So the improv makes it easier for me to establish a sort of relationship with somebody as opposed to me just reciting lines. So that is
Hmm.
kind of the way I look at it.
What cultural aspects keep you coming back to Amtgard?
Short and simple, it's the community. The simple act of being accepted, no matter what I am or who I am, has been so great. Even when I transitioned, I was so terrified of what Amtgard was going to look at when I transitioned that I went to an Amtgard event that weekend when I threw away all my male clothes and determined to go to become female and live as a female. I was so terrified, but it was such a welcoming atmosphere. And I think that the community is probably the most intoxicating aspect of Amp that just kind of makes me come back.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about it. It's that, it's a really safe space for a lot of the LGBT community.
Yeah.
It's it's really awesome. So, that's one of my favorite aspects about it. So, how do you usually spend a park day?
Nowadays, I usually just sit and watch. I'll sit down, I'll watch, I'll be a bean counter or a timer for battle games. Unless there's kind of a project I'm working on, like here recently, I've been sitting and weaving belts. I even was teaching somebody how to weave a belt this last time I was at a park. But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of me just watching more than anything.
That's awesome. So, that's kind of me as well. Like, it's usually A&S or helping with fighting. Do you feel the non-combat side of Amtgard helps build friendships and community differently than combat side?
I don't think they are like I'm not sure that they do it differently. You're basically bonding over something that you really enjoy doing on both sides, coming together to collaborate, to teach, to just kind of spend time together. I think that the bonds or community of fighting side is pretty tight, and then you have the art side that is pretty tight, and both sides want to teach each other to get better. So I don't think that it's different in the way you build friendships. I think it's still generally the psychology is the same.
Yeah. Do you have any funny or memorable out of field moments?
Okay. I think my funniest moment was a role play moment. I believe it was at Hannah. I was supposed to go and do something. I went to eat, came back up to the main building, and I understood that Reten was like, "Hey, I'm not or I would never be assassinated." And I'm like, "Okay, let's figure this out." So I went into there and I had tried to convince some people to go assassinate Reten as Tic Tac. And they agreed. I was giving cookies to them to go do this. And all of a sudden, Reten comes in really hot. Like you thought that people would assassinate me and everything like that. And then there was sort of like this back and forth between Tic Tic and Reten. And then Tic Tic had said something about his fighting company, not knowing that the entire, like a huge chunk of the fighting company was behind her. And it just became this whole chaotic, super fun thing that happened. That is
So,
probably my favorite memory.
now, which fighting company is he a part of again?
Saracens.
That's what I thought. Okay,
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah,
fighting
I had made
everywhere.
fun of the Saracens and there was just a bunch of Saracens behind me and I was like, "Oh no."
That sounds accurate. So, what's something non-combat related in Amtgard that you're proud of doing that isn't related to fighting? I know that RP is a pretty big part of that.
So it is kind of, I think the thing that I'm most proud of is when I started heavily RPing, at Rising Winds events, as an example. I'm a pretty socially awkward person, so I never try to be social, and I get really nervous. But playing Tick Tick offered a different type of perspective because Tick Tick was very social and Tick Tick was very like, okay, if she doesn't like something, then she'll just forget about it, and it's sort of like a thing with her. And then eventually, I started sort of getting from those interactions to allow me to be social outside of being Tick Tick. So it allowed me to get out of my shell and be more of a social person, which is, I'm really proud of that. I'm proud that I'm able to take aspects of characters that were so foreign to me and do stuff. But like even my, when I worked for customer service, I was a very different person in customer service than I was in real life because it was an act, it was a job, and I had to play a part. And taking aspects of those parts and making myself better, that is a very proud moment.
That is awesome. I think we're going to go ahead and close out if that's all right with you.
Sure.
Yeah. Do you feel like you found your niche inside of Amtgard in the non-combat side of things, or do you consider yourself more open in the paths you take, like with service, RP, ANS?
I think that I've opened up so much when it comes to Amtgard. I'm not sure that I have a niche at this point. My niche originally was roleplay. That was the thing that I was just the most drawn to. But as I opened up my paths, there it stopped being a niche because that wasn't 100% me. Now it's like 25%, and then this ANS project is 15%, and it's always kind of jumping back and forth. So I don't know that I technically have a niche at this point because I've opened myself up to non-com stuff, more than just role play.
That's super cool. And so speaking of finding things, have you ever inspired anyone else to try the non-combat side of Amtgard? And if so, like how did it work out?
I think the very important thing for me was that I think that I have because I'm all about player visibility because I'd like to see players grow in the game. And I've inspired people to jump into Office. I even during my mid Grand Duck reign, I started pulling people who don't do award scrolls to do award scrolls and sort of making them more visible and into the ANS stuff because they wanted to do ANS, but it's not necessarily part of the culture of our park and stuff. So I think that I have inspired people to do more than just fight.
You mentioned previously that Amtgard has helped you be more open and whatnot. Along with that, what's one lesson you've learned from Amtgard that you carry with you a lot?
Here's the biggest lesson. So I've always had two goals in Amtgard. It was becoming Master Thespian, which Rising Winds doesn't have, but so it's kind of shifted to Master Mask, and to become Paragon Monster. And I've always rejected the idea that I would want knighthood or anything like that. And it's just recently that I started seeing that I could do other paths of masterhood, but I still rejected the idea of knighthood. But
Oh,
Sicarius said something to me that really stuck with me. I was dealing with something really heavy and everything, and part of the thing was somebody had said that I was a ward farming, which makes no sense. I just have aspects or goals that I want to achieve. And Sicarius said, this game is about trying to get recognition for things. And not wanting knighthood or not going for knighthood, his exact quote that stuck with me is, "Your masterhood on a path is your last selfish award because this belt, is for them." And it kind of stuck with me because it was like, he's right. Like knighthood is for everyone else, not for you. It is for everyone else to celebrate, for everyone else to sort of get the mentorship from you. It is not about you wanting knighthood, it is about them wanting you to be a knight. So it just kind of stuck with me the entire time. He is now my grand knight. So
oh really? So you're in a belt line.
I am in I am Beethan Squire.
Oh, you're Beethan? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's great.
Yeah,
Beethan is lovely.
he is. He has been awesome.
How do you feel Amtgard is different today than when you started?
After 21 plus years in the game, it's definitely changed. I talk about the aspects of things beyond rulebook. The culture has changed dramatically in such good ways. I talked about knighthood with somebody back like even 10 years ago. Knighthood was, depending on the kingdom that you were in, it was a very much like a boys club. And the attitude of knights were, if you weren't a knight, you weren't anything in the game. But like as the culture shifted, it stopped being about that. It started being about what knighthood should be: the mentorship, the community, the being a pinnacle of the community. And I think that was the biggest change. The role play aspect started to decline from when I first started, which is very sad. But like I'm starting to see more and more people get into role play, so that's always a good thing. But the game changed for the better, ultimately.
Last but not least, what do you hope your legacy in Amtgard will be?
Oh, goodness. Honestly, I think my legacy will be the stories that people tell about my characters. Because roleplay is such a big part of my life, I'd like to be able to be seen as the person who impacted the roleplay community and the stories and the lessons that I have taught in roleplay, or to do roleplay and stuff like that, to be carried down and taught to somebody else, and stuff like that. I think that would be my legacy more than anything else.
That's lovely. Well, I really appreciate you taking this interview. You're the first person I've interviewed in this series so far, so I really appreciate you dealing with the bumps along the way. At least in my mind, when I think of you, I think of, service and RP. So I really, really appreciate you coming out today, and thank you very, very much.
You have a wonderful day, okay?
Thank you. And it's lovely talking to you. Can't wait to see you at Bridge Wars.
See ya, Bridgewars.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you'd like to hear more about non-combat participants in Amtgard, consider clicking on the like and subscribe buttons. This lets me know you like my content and would like to listen to more in the future. If you would like someone specific to be interviewed, or you'd like to have me interview you, please reach out to my Discord server at Mellafalaman or message me on Facebook using my real name, Megan McLean. Thank you!